Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back in AI era Islamic Abrahamic wisdom. You are listening to a continuing series from The Foundations of Islamic Jurisprudence, Volume 1, Sub-Volume 3, a constitutional study of governance during the caliphate of Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiyallahu an, researched and authored by Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir. History does not judge governments in times of comfort. It judges them in moments of crisis. During the devastating famine known as ul-Ramada, 18 AH, the Islamic State faced a constitutional test that still challenges modern governments. How can a powerful center act decisively without paralyzing local initiative? Hazrat Umar, radiyallahu an, answered this not with force, but with constitutional intelligence, by creating provincial emergency powers that were delegated, temporary, accountable, and morally bound. This episode examines how Islamic jurisprudence balanced authority with restraint, unity with autonomy, and emergency action with lasting accountability.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to A-Era Islamic Abrahamic Wisdom. It's great to have you with us. Today, we're doing a really special deep dive. We're going to be exploring an incredible piece of history, drawing from Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir's book, The Foundation of Islamic Jurisprudence. Specifically, we're looking at Volume 1, Sub-Volume 3, which focuses on the amazing leadership of Umar ibn al-Khattab. What we're going to do is break down his truly brilliant crisis management playbook, and you'll see this is an approach that is just as relevant today as it was way back in the 7th century. So, let's jump right in. So, let's start with this big question. When a crisis hits, why do huge empires just break? Think about it. An emergency, whether it's a famine, a plague, or a war, it's like the ultimate stress test for any government. It doesn't really create new problems. What it does is expose all the weaknesses that were already there. A really strong, flexible system, it can bend under that pressure. It can adapt. But a fragile one, especially a big, sprawling state, it just shatters. All those hidden cracks suddenly become massive canyons.
And if you look at history, you'll see that large states tend to fail in one of three pretty predictable ways when things go wrong. Okay, so first, you've got over-centralization. This is where the capital, the central government, tries to micromanage everything. The problem? It leads to huge delays and really bad decisions because, frankly, they have no idea what's actually happening on the ground. Then, you've got the total opposite problem, uncontrolled decentralization. This is just chaos. Everyone does their own thing, and it leads to corruption, inequality. It's a mess. And finally, number 3, legal paralysis. This is when leaders just freeze. They're so afraid of overstepping their authority or breaking the law that they do nothing at all. But what if there was a fourth option, a better way?
Well, that's exactly the situation Caliph Omar faced during the devastating Year of Ashes famine. I mean, this was a catastrophic event. He looked at those 3 failed paths we just talked about, and he rejected every single one of them. He knew there had to be a better way. And what he came up with was a truly revolutionary principle for crisis management, one that could perfectly, masterfully balance the need for central authority with the need for super-fast, effective local action. And this right here, this is the core idea. It's just pure genius in its simplicity and its power. Let's really break this down because it's important. Emergency authority must be delegated, not abdicated. What does that mean? It means you give power to your local leaders so they can act fast, but you don't just wash your hands of it. The center is still ultimately responsible. Then there's the second part, coordinated, not concentrated. This is brilliant. The central government's job isn't to hoard all the power and make every single decision. No. Its job is to be like an orchestra conductor, guiding the overall strategy, making sure resources get to where they need to go. It's a system that's built on trust, but it's an empowered, structured trust. So out of this powerful principle came a really sophisticated system. We can call it provincial emergency powers. And what it was really was a framework built for what you might call structured flexibility. It gave the provincial governors the actual legal authority they needed to move fast and get things done. But, and this is so important, it wasn't a free-for-all. It was all done within very clear constitutional limits. So you're probably wondering, how did this actually work on the ground?
Right. It absolutely was not about just handing governors a blank check and saying, good luck. No way. The entire system was designed with these incredibly smart constitutional safeguards built right in. Their whole purpose was to prevent any abuse of power, even when things were desperate. Honestly, it was a masterclass in how you balance local freedom to act with central accountability. And these 4 safeguards were basically the guardrails of the whole system. Let's walk through them. First, you had temporal limits. This is huge. The special powers automatically ended the moment the crisis was over. This stopped a temporary emergency from turning into a permanent power grab, something we see all the time, right? Second, purpose limits. The authority was only for one thing: relief and stability. Nothing else. You couldn't use it to settle old scores or push a personal agenda. Third, reporting duties. Super important. Governors had to constantly report everything they were doing back to the center. Total transparency. And finally, oversight mechanisms. After it was all over, there were audits, there were inquiries. This ensured everyone was held accountable for their actions. This table does such a great job of showing that brilliant division of labor. You can really see the synergy. Look at the left side. The center's role was to orchestrate. They handled the big picture stuff, right? Coordinating huge shipments of aid between provinces, making sure the supply routes were secure. On the right, you've got the provinces. Their role was to execute. They were the ones on the ground using their local knowledge, which is priceless in a crisis, to actually get that aid to the people who needed it and to keep local markets from collapsing. You could say the center handled the what, and the provinces nailed the how. And when we look at the year of Ashes famine, you can see this system in action, and the results were just incredible. Because the center was coordinating everything. Provinces that had food, like Syria and Egypt, were able to send these massive convoys of aid to the hardest-hit areas in the Arabian Peninsula. And because the local governors were empowered to act, that aid didn't just sit in a warehouse. It was distributed quickly, fairly, and effectively. It's powerful proof that you don't have to sacrifice good governance or human rights just because there's an emergency.
Now, it's really easy to look at this and think, wow, that's a fascinating story from history. But it's so much more than that. This strategy from 1400 years ago is a timeless blueprint for how to govern effectively in a crisis. Think about it. It addresses the exact same problems that modern countries, with all of our amazing technology, still struggle with today. Whether we're talking about pandemics, natural disasters, or huge economic shocks, the core challenges are the same. So the big question is, why does this ancient wisdom matter so much for us right here, right now?
Let's boil it down to the key takeaways for any leader today. So many of the failures we see in modern crisis response, they happen because these exact principles get ignored. Umar's model gives us a clear roadmap. First, delegate authority and do it early. Don't wait. Second, be crystal clear about the scope and the limits of any emergency powers. No gray areas. Third, you have to keep those channels for reporting and auditing open. Transparency is non-negotiable. Fourth, and this is crucial, the moment the crisis is over, you go back to the normal rule of law. And maybe the most important lesson of all, treat an emergency as a test of your constitution, not an excuse to throw it out the window.
And that really leaves us with this profound final thought. What Umar created wasn't just some clever compromise between central control and local freedom, it was something more. It was a higher form of governance, almost a kind of constitutional intelligence. It created a state that was, at the same time, both incredibly organized and incredibly agile. And it's built on this beautiful idea that real strength doesn't come from hoarding power at the top. It comes from empowering the people on the front lines and trusting them to act wisely, in harmony with the center.
So if this look into history gave you a new perspective on leadership and governance, we'd be so grateful if you'd support the channel. Please subscribe, give this video a like, and please share it with your friends. It genuinely helps us to keep bringing this kind of analysis to you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.